1 minute ago, Diddy loses it. When Terrence Howard shows truth about his adopted white daughter. When Sean Diddy Combs appeared on Instagram Live in the early days of 2020, the world was not expecting a narrative shift of this magnitude. A mogul synonymous with music, luxury, and media dominance. Diddy introduced a young white girl, preteen, visibly nervous as his newly adopted daughter. He coaxed her to repeat her new name, smiled at the camera, and just like that, millions of viewers became witnesses to a moment that at first glance seemed oddly heartwarming. But today, that same moment reads very differently. The segment we now revisit wasn't merely a man opening his home. It was, according to emerging testimonies and investigative scrutiny, the introduction to one of the most complex and unsettling celebrity stories of the decade. That girl's name, Ava Baron Combs. And in this special report, we track what happened before, during, and after her brief, awkward debut into the public eye. A journey that now stretches across social media, footprints, courtroom statements, insider testimonies, and the silent tremble of a question the internet can't stop asking: where is Ava now, and why did she vanish? As we trace back the digital breadcrumbs, it's important to understand the setting. This wasn't just a celebrity quarantine stream. This was 2020, the world on lockdown, people glued to screens searching for hope, distraction, or humanity. And when a powerful figure like Diddy introduces a vulnerable child with no public record, eyebrows raise. Quietly at first, but consistently. Because Ava wasn't just missing from future birthday posts. She was absent from family footage. She never appeared in the casual content that Diddy, known for documenting his glamorous life, often shared. And in the rare glimpses the public did catch, Ava stood stiff, uncertain, always near Diddy's sons, never his daughters. It didn't feel familial, it felt curated. That unease remained unspoken, until actor Terrence Howard took the stand. In a courtroom, far from the cameras testifying on unrelated industry allegations, Howard paused mid-sentence. He dropped a reference not by name, but in tone. There's someone, he said, quietly involved in this that no one expects. The silence that followed wasn't scripted, and the name Ava surfaced again, whispered first, then shared, then trending. Social media, once a backdrop for Ava's brief introduction, became the battleground of speculation. Within days, timelines lit up. Users compared footage, matched expressions, rewatched Diddy's live frame by frame. It didn't take long for a chilling theory to emerge. What if Ava wasn't adopted as a gesture of compassion, but as part of something else? Former Diddy bodyguard Gene Deal soon entered the narrative, offering his own recollection. According to Deal, Ava's appearance wasn't spontaneous, it was strategy. He claimed Diddy sought to soften his public image amid growing criticism. That Ava's brief time in the spotlight was orchestrated, not genuine. She was never family, he said in a recorded interview. She was a prop. That statement alone might have been dismissed, but Deal wasn't alone. Others from Diddy's inner circle began echoing the same sentiment. There were no school enrollments, no medical paperwork, no records suggesting official guardianship. And more disturbingly, no signs of Ava after that brief viral moment. Then came the turning point. Legal filings surfaced, first against Diddy himself, then his sons, Christian and Justin Combs. Allegations involving abuse and coercion, details that mirrored patterns described by Ava's brief time in the household. And once again, Terrence Howard's statement resurfaced, not just cryptic anymore, but potentially clarifying. This story isn't built on hearsay. It's built on a chain of public records, court documents, and a silence that grows louder the longer it continues. Because in a world where celebrities share every yacht party and award, Ava's absence became deafening. Still, Diddy never commented again. Not in interviews, not on Father's Day, not during legal pressers. He moved on. But the public didn't, and neither did Ava. Sources close to federal investigations confirm that Ava Baron Combs long presumed missing, is now in contact with authorities. She's not hiding, she's not erased, she's reportedly cooperating. And if true, this transforms the story from speculation to testimony. But this is just the beginning. Because when the spotlight moved off Ava, it didn't take long for the shadows around Diddy's public image to begin shifting. What appeared to be a self-made empire of music, fashion, and influence began to reveal something deeper, a meticulously curated performance bolstered by silence, protected by power, and as it turns out, enabled by a carefully managed support system. At the heart of this network were Diddy's sons, Justin and Christian Combs, long seen as heirs to the Combs legacy. They appeared at red carpets, hosted parties, shared stages. But in the rare moments Ava reappeared, it was always in their orbit. Not Diddy's daughters, not the wider family, just them. And now that pattern has taken on chilling new implications. Court filings from late 2024 name both brothers in ongoing investigations, one involving coercion, the other personal misconduct. Neither case directly named Ava, but the overlaps in timeline and behavior were enough to reignite public scrutiny, and more notably enough for federal investigators to expand their inquiry. What once seemed like isolated rumors suddenly aligned with a larger, more systemic structure. Gene Deal's commentary became more than background noise. He alleged this wasn't a case of one man behaving badly, but of learned behavior passed down, mirrored, normalized. You either get used, or you start using. Deal said, summarizing what he described as a cycle of exploitation inside elite entertainment circles. A world where power didn't just corrupt it, train the next generation to do the same. It was a statement that echoed louder when paired with Diddy's own words. In that original live stream with Ava, Diddy casually said, "I adopted you like Madonna did." A reference that at the time passed as flippant, but in hindsight feels ominous, because Madonna's high-profile adoptions have themselves been under intense global scrutiny. And Diddy's mirroring of that model, it now feels less like inspiration, more like imitation without the paperwork. The silence of official channels has only intensified public curiosity. No confirmation of adoption, no school registration, no peer photos. In the internet age, where a single tweet can unearth entire histories, Ava Baron Combs remains curiously a ghost, appearing briefly then erased. And the few frames that do exist show a young girl unsure, often stiff, often looking away from the camera, as if caught in something she didn't choose. Meanwhile, others began stepping forward. Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former partner, filed a lawsuit in late 2023 that served as an emotional detonator. In her complaint, she described an environment of pressure, fear, and surveillance. She claimed she was monitored, isolated, and manipulated over years. And in her closing statement, she warned that what happened to her wasn't just about her. That claim took on new weight as more individuals began connecting Cassie's experience to Ava's trajectory, not in detail, but in structure. Because in both stories, the script reads the same: invitation, isolation, disappearance. And then came 50 Cent, often dismissed for his brash style and history of public feuds. The rapper's warnings about Diddy had long been seen as entertainment. But in early 2025, his tone shifted. He announced a documentary, not a diss track, not a tweet storm, a full-length investigative production titled "Did He Do It?" In one released clip, 50 looked directly at the camera and said, "They can't charge him for what we saw, but we can't unsee it." It was the kind of line that cuts through speculation, suggesting not just knowledge, but visual evidence. And more critically, the suggestion that the public, once entertained by rumor, was now ready for truth. All of this builds toward one pivotal shift: Ava's reappearance, not as a symbol, but as a witness. Sources indicate she is cooperating, that she has spoken with legal representatives, that she may hold key information connecting the timeline of her introduction with the widening legal investigations surrounding the Combs family. This changes everything, because the missing girl at the heart of a viral moment may now be the voice that unravels a legacy built over decades. And while Diddy has yet to respond directly, his public behavior has changed dramatically. Sudden legal maneuvers, canceled appearances, purged social media, signs not of confidence but of concern. Because for a figure like Sean Diddy Combs, whose brand was built on visibility, on presence, to go dark online was more than a personal decision. It was a signal. Something had shifted. And that shift, as it turns out, aligned perfectly with what was unfolding behind closed doors. The timeline begins to matter here. Not just for clarity, but for understanding how fast whispers became headlines, and how Ava Baron Combs, once seen as an anonymous child in a live stream, became the quiet axis of a major federal probe. Let's rewind to that live stream again, early 2020. The world is shutting down. Diddy, long criticized for lavish excess and headline scandals, surprises viewers with a rare, tender gesture. A young girl, white, visibly nervous, stands by his side. "This is my adopted daughter," he says, smiling. The moment plays like an effort at redemption, a reset. It trends briefly, and then disappears. Except Ava doesn't just disappear from the timeline, she disappears entirely. No follow-ups, no birthdays, no school events, no Instagram cameos, despite Diddy's habit of documenting everything from boat parties to casual dinners. Ava's absence wasn't subtle, it was total, and the silence that followed began to hum louder as the months passed. Then 2021. Lawsuits begin. Not directly about Ava, but circling the same themes: control, manipulation, image versus reality. The first suits name Diddy in vague, then increasingly specific terms. Civil complaints citing improper conduct, accusations of pressure-power imbalance. Nothing proven yet, but enough to darken the brand. By 2022, Terrence Howard steps forward. His court testimony, officially unrelated to Diddy, includes a moment of hesitation. He references a situation involving someone unexpected. It's subtle, but the internet catches it. And in true digital fashion connection follows speculation. Ava's name reemerges, quietly then virally. That's when the investigation accelerates. Inside sources confirm federal agencies begin reviewing media from Diddy's properties. Devices are seized, travel logs examined, communications pulled. The scale of inquiry expands slowly but surely. And within that expansion, a single now viral question echoes: where is Ava Baron Combs? The answer is more complicated than absence, because what began as a search for a person evolved into a search for proof. Investigators weren't just asking where Ava was, they were asking why she had been introduced and what her sudden vanishing suggested about the world behind the lens. One former employee interviewed under anonymity shared a troubling observation: everything was staged. The photos, the live stream. It wasn't spontaneous. There was always someone off-camera directing. The implication: Ava was part of a rollout, not a rescue. In parallel, new names appear in court filings: Justin and Christian Combs, Diddy's sons, both involved in separate legal complaints tied to inappropriate conduct. Each case shares thematic overlap, with ongoing accusations against their father, questions of power, access, silence. And again, Ava is never named directly. But the public begins drawing lines between her rare appearances and these two men. Always them. Never the daughters. Never friends her age. The final dot on the timeline, at least for now, lands in early 2025. That's when federal documents confirm Ava is no longer considered missing. She's not on the run. She's cooperating. And her testimony, while sealed, is expected to play a central role in what happens next. That moment changes everything. Because until then, Ava was a mystery, a symbol, a warning. But if she speaks, if she testifies, she becomes a witness. And that distinction shifts the weight of the entire case. It connects the live stream to the lawsuits, the image to the implication. It creates a path forward, not just for investigators, but for the public still trying to make sense of how something that began as a heartwarming moment became a national reckoning. But no reckoning is complete without asking the hardest question of all: who stood by and watched? Because the focus until now has been on the center, on Diddy, on Ava, on those in the frame. But every spotlight casts a shadow, and in those shadows were people who knew, people who managed the schedules, arranged the meetings, handled the logistics, assistants, agents, publicists, and confidants, the machine behind the mogul. And that machine, it didn't break overnight. It was engineered for longevity. Former staff members describe an atmosphere of controlled loyalty, not through contracts but culture. You didn't question decisions. You followed protocol. Image was everything, and silence was the currency. And when silence broke even slightly, jobs vanished. It's why when Gene Deal spoke up, the ripple was immediate. His role as Diddy's former bodyguard placed him in rooms few ever saw. And what he revealed wasn't just misconduct, it was orchestration. According to Deal, Ava's introduction was part of a broader strategy to rebrand Diddy's public persona during a time of declining reputation. It was image rehab, he said, but not for her benefit. His account has since been supported by others: stylists, assistants, even party planners, each offering pieces of a puzzle: unusual travel itineraries, off-book meetings, scripted social media posts, an entire ecosystem built to present one narrative while concealing another. And then there's the legal team. Behind the polished veneer of celebrity lawyers and legal reps lies a pattern of settlements, quiet ones, NDA-bound, payments structured to prevent public escalation. According to leaked memos from 2023, at least 3 confidential agreements were made with individuals linked indirectly to the case. None mentioned Ava directly, but each referenced incidents surrounding private conduct and perceived influence. In other words, behavior behind closed doors, controlled by power, paid to be forgotten. The industry, too, has begun shifting. Artists who once posed in photos, toasted champagne, or called Diddy family have gone silent. Not one public statement of support has emerged since the investigations turned serious. Even longtime collaborators have distanced themselves, pulling down photos, skipping events, scheduling conflicts rising overnight. Because in Hollywood, silence is a language, and right now it's speaking volumes. But the most telling sign may be how Ava herself has become the axis for accountability, not just for Diddy, but for a system that protected him, a system that cheered when the headlines were hits and looked away when the consequences surfaced. In one interview, a former tour coordinator summed it up: people knew. They just didn't want to lose access, or relevance, or money. And that's where the stakes rise. Because if Ava speaks publicly, if her testimony reveals who helped, who enabled, who looked away, this won't just be about one man's fall. It will be about how far the roots of silence reach, and how deep complicity runs. The signs are already there: subpoenas to former managers, testimony requests to event organizers, even a rumored call for music executives to appear in front of a private inquiry. The walls are closing in, not just on Diddy, but on an entire network built on control. And yet amid the darkness, something is beginning to change. The narrative isn't just about loss or fear anymore. It's about exposure, about voice, about reclaiming space from systems that once suppressed it. And for Ava, whose silence once felt like erasure, this may be the beginning of a different story, one where speaking becomes power. Because in a case now stretching across headlines, courtrooms, and social media feeds, her voice is no longer a mystery. It's a signal. And those listening, from federal investigators to former fans, from fellow survivors to the industry elite, are bracing for what it might reveal. If Ava testifies, it won't just confirm suspicions. It will crystallize them. Her words, shaped by what she saw, heard, and felt, could fill the gaps in every timeline, every claim, every rumor. She isn't just a name now, she's the witness. The one who lived behind the curtain. The one who stood where the cameras stopped rolling. And that possibility is already shifting the ground beneath Diddy's empire. In recent months, public appearances have dried up. Brand collaborations have stalled. Internal sources describe panic mode PR, sudden video deletions, lawyer shuffles, crisis meetings in back offices once used for celebration. The once untouchable media mogul is watching his influence dissolve, not through scandal alone, but through exposure. And the weight of that exposure is multiplying. Investigations are no longer isolated. They're intersectional: financial audits, digital forensics, testimony cross-checks. Prosecutors, according to leaked memos, are building a case that goes beyond a pattern, a method, a legacy of control. What they seek isn't just a conviction, it's clarity, a narrative reconstructed from those who endured it. And the internet, once a bystander, is now an active participant. Hashtags track every update. Reddit threads dissect every facial twitch from old videos. YouTube commentators turn screenshots into storyboards. It's more than curiosity, it's collective memory building. A refusal to forget or let others forget what might have happened when the lights were off. But beyond the frenzy lies something more intimate. This is at its core a story about power. Who holds it, who protects it, and who survives it. And for Ava, survival may now mean something different. It may mean agency. For a girl once positioned like a trophy whose presence felt like a press release, the chance to speak is more than vindication, it's liberation. Not just for her, but for every other name hidden behind acronyms, sealed files, and non-disclosure agreements. In that light, this is no longer just about Diddy, or even about celebrity. It's about legacy and how quickly it can be rewritten when truth takes the mic. Because if Ava's voice reaches the courtroom, if she connects the lines others only dared whisper, the impact could be seismic. Not a fall from grace, but an unraveling. The dismantling of decades of protection of impunity wrapped in fame. And the signal to others still living in silence: you are not alone. Already the effects are being felt. A wave of young women have begun coming forward, not all linked to Diddy but to similar ecosystems. Influencers, musicians, executives. The web stretches wide, and Ava's reemergence has become a kind of catalyst. Her name, once filtered and cropped, now stands full screen, unblurred, unsilenced. And the industry knows it, which is why behind the scenes conversations are changing. Policies are being reviewed. Executives are reconsidering alliances. Former enablers are lawyering up. The reckoning isn't on its way, it's already begun. Ava Baron Combs, a child once introduced in an awkward live stream, now stands at the threshold of something historic. If she chooses to speak publicly, her testimony could reshape how power, protection, and silence are understood in modern media. Because this story, born in secrecy, now lives in full view. And the final chapter, it's still being written by courts, by witnesses, and perhaps most importantly, by Ava herself. As we close this special report, one truth remains: the cameras may have turned off, but the world, it's still watching.